Hello everyone, welcome to this session on Introduction to Cloud Computing. Today in this session I'll be taking you guys through what is cloud computing exactly and how to get started in it. And this session is basically for people who are new to cloud computing. Probably you would have heard somewhere about cloud computing, your friend would have told you, and today you landed up here learning about cloud computing. So you won't regret coming to this session, guys. Let's go ahead and see what all we'll be covering in this session today. So we'll start off with what is cloud computing, basically by getting introduced to it, and then we'll move on to discuss the various cloud service models which are there in cloud computing. Followed by, I will be discussing some of the prominent cloud providers in the industry, and out of which we will be picking up the top cloud providers, and I will also be showing you a hands-on for that. Right, so guys, this is the agenda for this session. I hope it's clear to you. Now let's go ahead and get started with what is cloud computing. So guys, cloud computing is basically the practice of using remote servers on the internet for carrying out a task. And basically what you do is you use remote computers or servers rather than using your own computers or servers, right? Now, what do you mean by that? That basically means that let's say you have a server on your system, right? And you are using it for some work. Now, let's say you want to do a work on your particular system. Let's say you want to do video processing or you want to do some other task, and that particular task is not able to, it's not able to complete on that particular system because of resource limitations. Okay, now because of resource limitations, you're not able to complete that task. So now, you go to the market and you imagine, okay, so I have to buy a 64 gig RAM CPU with, let's say, i7 9th generation CPU. It will cost you around 85,000 rupees, right? Now, to invest that much amount of money for the work that you have to do is obviously going to put a hole in your pocket. Now imagine that video processing work which you have to do is just temporary. Let's say you just have to do it for 3-4 days, and after that you won't require that much specification for your work. So what would you do after that? So this investment of 85,000 rupees would basically cost you because you actually just need it for 4 days, and after that you won't be needing it. And that is exactly what cloud computing is all about. So cloud computing basically says that, if you need any server, irrespective of what configuration you need, if you need any server, you can basically come to me and ask for me about that, and I can rent you that server, and whenever you're done with the work, you can return that server back to me. So if I were to reiterate what I just said, if I have to do the video processing work, what I'll do is I'll go to any cloud provider like Microsoft or AWS or Google Cloud, and I will select the server that I want. It could be a 64 GB RAM server, it could be a 128 GB RAM server. So once I get that server, so basically Google Cloud or AWS or Microsoft Azure will give me that server and will give me an IP address where I can go to and log into the server. I can get my work done over there. I can download the output files on my system, and then I can just stop that server and I can forget about it. And I will only be charged for the number of minutes that I use that server for, right? And this is the most important thing in cloud computing, or probably the thing which makes cloud computing such a hit in the IT industry, that it does not make you invest in infrastructure. Right, you can rent infrastructure, and whenever you're done with infrastructure, there's no strings attached, you can forget about it. So that is what cloud computing is all about. Now let's take an example here. So what is happening here? Let's say you are a guy, and what you want to do is you want to open an app like Instagram. Okay, so when you want to open an app like Instagram, and let's say you're very new to the business scenario. So what you do is you create that app on your system, and now that app is ready. And now you want to make this app available to the world. So what do? Right? So in the earlier scenario, when cloud computing were not there, you would probably have to buy some servers, right, where you would upload your application, make it available to the users that are there on the internet, and as and when the user base will grow, you will have to add more and more servers over here, right? But initially you will have to buy a server, right? And you will need a static IP, you will need a dedicated internet connection, you will need to make your server online 24/7, right? And for that you will need electrical supply 24/7, you will need to have backup generators for your server, because that is what your business will rely on, that is what will decide the success of your application, right? So if you were to do it before cloud computing, without even starting your business, you would have invested a lot of money into putting your application out there. But with cloud computing, like what I just explained you could rent servers, you can put your application out there, right, which would automatically give you that static IP address, automatically be available 24/7, right? And you would not have to worry about whether my application will go down or not, because you are backed by the infrastructure of companies like Amazon, companies like Google, companies like Microsoft Azure, and they'll be charging you fraction of the cost that you would be investing earlier. So if I were to talk about the pricing over here, guys, the pricing is as low as $0.005 an hour, right? That is the kind of pricing which you get per server. I'm talking about per server, and obviously this pricing goes up with respect to the configuration that you want. Like for example, the pricing that I just told you is for probably a 1 or 2 GB RAM system with around a 2 CPU cores, right? So that pricing is justified for this kind of a system spec, right? But if you go higher, let's say you need a 164 GB RAM system and you need around 8 core CPUs in that, you need around 1 terabyte of storage, it'll be around $1.50 or $2 an hour, which is still pretty cheap, right? So that is the kind of pricing that you get with cloud computing, and that is why people prefer cloud computing, especially startups who do not know whether they will be able to sustain their business in the long term, right? And hence they do not want to take the bet of buying huge infrastructure for their application, which is basically going to be available to millions or billions of people online. Like if you take the example of Instagram, it is probably used by 5 or 6 million people every day, right? So imagine the kind of infrastructure that they would need to support their application. But you would seldom see Instagram go down, right? Or you would seldom see that the Instagram app has become slow just because of the Instagram servers having more load. If you have played PUBG, which is a very popular online game, right, that imagine the kind of infrastructure that these guys would have set up for that game, because you play multiplayer with people online, right? So again, if they were to invest, let's say they made the game and they were to invest initially in the infrastructure without even knowing whether their application or whether the game is going to be such a hit, imagine the kind of investment they would have to do, and imagine if their application did not work, the kind of loss that they would have to face, right? And this is why cloud computing is such a hit in the industry right now. Most of the startups are on cloud. Most of the companies who used to maintain their own servers have their own maintenance teams, have system administrators who used to look out at servers. They all have moved to the cloud because of the benefits that they get, because of the service level agreements that the cloud providers promise, so on and so forth. There are a lot of advantages, right? So let us talk about the advantages that you get with cloud computing. So the first advantage is you have to give little or very less investment, right? So there's literally no investment when you are actually wanting an infrastructure on the cloud, because you're basically being charged per minute, right? So anytime you feel something is going wrong, which is probably going to cost you a lot, you can stop the servers then and there. I mean, there's no liability on you that you have taken some 1,000 servers from us and you have to use those 1,000 servers for at least 6 months or a year. There's no liability. You can shut down those 1,000 servers any minute you want. Second thing is, as a company who is launching a product, right? So if you were to manage your own servers, if you were to manage all the security aspects of your servers, like whether your IP address is secure or not, whether all your ports are secure or not, whether your server is having the proper electricity or not, and whether there's a proper cooling system installed in the data center where you have put your servers or not. This is a lot of I'll say disturbance as a CEO or as a co-founder to you in a company when you just want to focus on your product, right? This is not what you want to work on. You want to work on your app. You want to work on the code of your app, right? So you would not want to work on the other disturbances which comes along with managing infrastructure. So what cloud providers do is they manage all these things for you. You don't have to worry about it. So you can focus more on app development. And third thing is it requires less workforce. So as a business, if I'm moving to cloud, it would require less workforce for me because I don't have to keep DB admins. I don't have to keep building management people, right? Because my infrastructure is on the cloud. I don't have to worry about whether electricity has gone down or proper cooling is there or not, or some hardware has failed, or there's proper redundancy of data which has been made or not. Everything can be managed on cloud, right? So therefore it requires less workforce and less headache in terms of managing all the responsibilities that you would have when you open a business, right? So now you might be wondering as to like what all products are there on the cloud that we use every day and probably we do not know they are being managed like that, or being managed in a way that I just described you that is on the cloud. So some popular examples that I can give you is Netflix. And Netflix is an app which is basically managed by solely AWS. So each and every server of Netflix is there on the AWS cloud platform. Right, right from their movie database to their where the movies are stored, to their login functionality, to their app servers, everything is there on Netflix, on AWS. Right. Similarly, Airbnb is a popular service which is also hosted on cloud. Amazon itself, which is the world's largest e-commerce company, is also there on cloud. Google Drive is also a product of cloud. Prime Video, which is a video streaming service such as Netflix, is also a product of cloud, and all of them are managed by one or the other cloud provider. Okay, you might not have realized this, but all of these apps basically exist on the cloud. Right now, we've basically now pretty much aware of what cloud computing is. Now let's go ahead and talk about the cloud computing models, right? So what are the cloud computing models? What are the basically different business models on which the cloud companies are offering their services? Let's discuss about that. So there are two kind of models that cloud companies follow. One are called the deployment models and the other are called the service models. Right, so these are two modes of business or two modes of services that you get in cloud. So let's discuss about them one by one. So let's talk about the deployment models first. So what is deployment models? How can you deploy your applications on cloud? What are the various ways you can deploy your applications on cloud? That is what deployment models are. Okay, so let's discuss them. So guys, the first option that you have in deployment models are public cloud. So what is public cloud? Public cloud is basically a place wherein you have one server rack. So let's talk about how cloud providers give you this awesome service of cloud computing, right? So let's say you as a company have launched around 20 servers on some cloud provider, right? And those 20 servers, let's say, are of the config, let's say 8 GB RAM and let's say 4 core CPUs, right? This is the config, and you've launched 20 such servers in cloud. Now, how do you think the cloud managers or the cloud providers who are giving you these 20 servers are managing these 20 servers on their infrastructure? How are these 20 servers managed on the cloud infrastructure? So for you, they are 20 different servers, but for the cloud provider, it's basically like one server rack. So what basically happens is there's a rack in which there are multiple servers which are installed. Okay, so each server, these cloud providers, they do not have specifications like 1 GB or 2 GB RAM servers. They have one server which has around 128 gig RAM and let's say 16 core CPUs. I'm just taking an example. So one server of theirs have this much of configuration. What they do is, on one of this server they install virtual machines. So if you launched 20 virtual machines, it could be that these 20 virtual machines are there on one server of the cloud provider. I hope this point is clear, guys. So what happens is, cloud providers, they do not deal in machines which are of 1 GB or 2 GB size. They buy servers which are 128 gig RAM and 16 core CPUs. This is one server for them. But for us as end users, if we want a 1 GB machine, what they do is they virtualize multiple systems, or they create multiple virtual machines out of one server and they give it to us. Okay, so I as a company, if I've launched 20 servers, it could be that I am just on one server. I'm operating out of one server and I feel that I'm working with 20 servers, right? So for the cloud provider, they are just making or maintaining one server, and I feel that I've launched 20 servers and I'm working in them. So this is a basic business model of cloud, and that is how they earn. They charge you for 20 servers, but they're actually operating just one server, right? So when you are basically on this kind of an infrastructure, wherein the server that you are on, it could be some other customer also have launched their own virtual machine also on this server, right? So this is a public server in which anybody can have their own virtual machine, and hence it's called a public cloud. Okay, when you compare it with private cloud, what basically happens is, in private cloud, the cloud provider guarantees you that the server that your virtual machine exists on, it will not be shared by any other customer. And this is basically the case with companies which have very confidential data. Although the cloud providers guarantee that there will be no there will be no leak of data, or it will never be like if you are on the same server and you are working on one virtual machine and you can see the other person's virtual machine who's also on that server. It will never happen like that. But still, some companies, they have to meet their data requirements. They have some data policies, and according to their data policies, they do not want to be on a public cloud infrastructure. And that is when cloud providers say, okay, so what we are going to do is we're going to give you a separate server. No other application will be deployed on your server. It will be just your machines which will be launched on this particular server. So this is one type of private cloud. Then you have another type of private cloud also, in which basically your company buys their own servers, right? So instead of going to a cloud provider, they buy multiple servers, and these servers are then virtualized, and they are used as if you were using a cloud provider. And this is again done because of security purposes. When companies, they do not want to rely on companies like Google or Azure or AWS because they think their data might be stolen and it's very confidential. So in that case, they buy their own set of servers because probably money is not a problem for them, right? And from those servers, they launch multiple machines, just like how the cloud providers are doing. So that is also what private cloud is. And if you have heard about OpenStack, that is one such software which helps you to deploy a private cloud, right? But like I said, guys, there are two types of private clouds. You can get a private cloud from a cloud provider as well, wherein they promise you that your server will not be shared by any other guy, right? And the other type of private cloud is wherein you buy your own set of or stack of servers and you treat it as a cloud for yourself, where you would virtually deploy multiple servers from each server also, and that is also called a private cloud, right? Then you have the third kind of cloud, which is called a hybrid cloud. Now what is a hybrid cloud? In hybrid cloud, basically you have a mixture of public and private cloud, right? So that could basically mean that, let's say my company also deals in confidential data, and I also want a website to be hosted for my company. So what I'll do is, let's say the website accesses a database which I do not want to be there on public cloud. So what I can do is I deploy the database on the private cloud, and I deploy my application on the public cloud, because obviously with the definition you would have got that private cloud is obviously more expensive, right? And my website is anyways available to the whole world, so why not deploy it on public cloud? And all my confidential data can reside on the private cloud, and only my website can access the private cloud of mine. So this is also one kind of deployment that you have in the industry, and this kind of deployment is called a hybrid deployment of cloud. Okay, moving forward, guys, now let's talk about the service model. So we talked about three models in which there were three different modes of deploying our application. We had the public mode of deploying application, we had the private mode of deploying application, and then we have the hybrid mode of deploying applications. Now let's move ahead and talk about service models. So what are service models? So service models are basically the services that are given you by cloud, and you can choose which kind of service you want. For example, there are three kinds of services that can be given to you. You could be given infrastructure as a service by a cloud provider. You could be given platform as a service by the cloud provider, or you could be given software as a service by the cloud provider. Now, what does this mean? Now, we were talking about servers, right? So if you get a server for yourself, the whole server for yourself, you're basically getting an infrastructure, right? So that is called infrastructure as a service. So the service that the cloud provider is giving you is that it can give you machines to work on. When I say machines to work on, it will launch a machine for you, and you can go to that IP address, you can work on it. So you're getting the whole infrastructure, you're getting the whole machine, you're getting the access to the operating system, right? You can install any kind of application on it, and you can do whatever you want with that server. So this is what infrastructure as a service is. You get a physical machine that the cloud provider launches, which you can basically RDP or SSH into and then work. Then you have something called as platform as a service. So in platform as a service, you do not get access to any kind of server. So if I were to take an example, let's say you want to launch a website or you want to deploy a website. Okay, now there are two ways you can deploy a website. Either I give you a server where you install all the required environment applications, like for example, you'd install the web application softwares, and then you deploy a website onto it, and then you go ahead and see how it is doing and all, right? The other way to do it is that I do not give you access to the server, but what I tell you is, you know what, this is a website or this is a app that I've developed. All you have to do is you just click on the upload button and you specify the website code files that you have, and then you click on deploy. So what I'll do is I already have servers which have the necessary softwares installed. I'll put your website on my servers and I'll give you a IP address which you can go onto and see your website, right? So in this case, you do not have to manage all the softwares which will be installed on the servers. You do not have to manage about the size of the machine that you want to launch your website on. Everything is abstracted from you, and you are basically just given an application through which you can upload a website, and which will result into giving you a IP address which if you go onto, you will see a website, right? So this is what platform as a service is, right? So instead of giving you machines, I'm giving you a dashboard where you can upload a website and then you can get your work done. So you do not have to worry about software installation and all. I'll do that for you. So this is platform as a service. So if I were to give you examples for this, let's say if you guys know about AWS, there's an application called Elastic Beanstalk, in which it gives you a dashboard. You upload your website, and that website gets hosted on a particular domain. You go to that domain, and you'll be able to see your website, right? The other example that I can give you is you would have seen there are a lot of websites which convert PDF to Word, right? So basically they do not ask you anything. You go on that website, you upload a PDF, you click on convert Word, your Word is downloaded, right? So that is again a platform wherein you do not have to download any software on your system, and basically then put your PDFs into it, and then you'll get a software is already there on their servers. Just upload a PDF over there, you'll get the Word file. That is platform as a service. Then the third type of service that you get is software as a service. Now what is software as a service? Basically, imagine something like this, that let's say you go to Gmail, right? So when you go to Gmail, you're using the mail software which is given to you as a service. Or let's talk about Google Drive. So you have Microsoft Word, you have Microsoft PowerPoint, which you have to install on your system to work on, right? So instead of installing everything, what you do get is the same software on the internet as a service to you. So Google is giving you that as a service, so you can use the Google Docs, you can use Google PowerPoints, you can use Google Excel sheets. So all that you can use, and all that software is there on the cloud, and just by going onto your browser and browsing to their website, you get that as a service to yourself. So that is software as a service. So in terms of their services, there are three kinds of services. I'll just revisit again. Infrastructure as a service, when you get a server to work on. Platform as a service, where you get a dashboard and you can upload your work and see your work after that. And the third is software as a service, where you don't have to install any softwares on your system to use them. You basically get them from the cloud provider and you can use them as it is on your browser. The other example for software as a service is CRM. The Zoho CRM, for example, is again a popular software as a service which you can use in your company for sales purposes or managing records services, etc. Right? So these were the cloud computing models which exist out there. Now, if I were to differentiate between these three, as you can see, when you have your own computer, you have to manage everything from networking, storage, servers. If you have to do virtualization, then your operating system, middleware, runtime, data, application. This is when you're not using cloud computing, right? When you're using infrastructure as a service from cloud, you get networking, you get storage, you get servers, you get virtualization, and everything of this sort is managed by the vendor, right? You do not have to worry about it. Then you have something called as operating system, middleware, runtime, data, and application, which when you get infrastructure as a service, you have to manage everything. Right? Every hardware component is managed by the vendor, but the software components you have to manage when you get a server from the cloud provider. When we talk about platform as a service, again, everything is managed by the cloud provider till the runtime environment, the operating system, everything is managed, but only your application you will have to upload and your data will have to upload, and everything else will be managed by the cloud provider. Then comes software as a service, where everything is managed by the vendor or your cloud provider. You just have to work on it, right? And then that is what a software as a service is. So guys, these were the three different cloud computing models that you have, which you can work on. Now let's go ahead and talk about, we talked about the cloud computing service. So a lot of people, a lot of companies give the cloud computing service. But now let's talk about the companies which give these cloud computing services to you, right? So if you were to get these kind of services, whom should you go to? So there are a lot of cloud providers, guys. The top three cloud providers are AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud, right? So if you talk in terms of the market share, then AWS is on the top, followed by you have Microsoft Azure, and then we have the Google Cloud Platform. So these are the three top cloud providers in the market right now, which basically offer the cloud services, and they offer all the cloud services that we have discussed so far, right? Today in this session, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a taste of how it happens on the cloud, or how do you get started onto cloud. For example, we were talking about launching servers, right? So how do you launch servers on the cloud? So let me show you that. So let's start by going to AWS website, right? So let me just skip on to my browser and let's go to aws.amazon.com, right? So I'm on to the AWS website. Now the first thing that you do is you log in. So I already have an account. If you don't, you can just click on this orange button and then an AWS account will be created for you. So I have an AWS account which I'm going to log in right now. So it's the email ID for that is this, and the password for that would be this. Okay, so this gives you the AWS management console, and from here you can manage your infrastructure. Now, how can you manage your infrastructure? So I want to deploy a server. So what I'll have to do is I will have to go to EC2. So you will click on EC2. So EC2 is basically a service which basically gives you servers to work on. Now, as you can see, there are no running servers as of now. So what I can go do is I can just go click on running instances, and I can click on launch instance. And now I will be asked to choose an operating system that I want on my server. So let's say I want the Ubuntu server. Okay. So I clicked on the Ubuntu server, and now it is asking me what kind of specification or configuration do you want for your servers. Do you want a 1 vCPU and a 1 GB RAM? So yes, probably that would be enough. Then it'll ask you the network preferences. So if you do not want to get into the details, you can actually just leave everything at default, and you can straight away go ahead and click on review and launch. So now you can just verify if everything is according to what you want, and finally click on launch, right? Now, a good thing about AWS is, guys, that it gives you a free trial for 1 year, right? So for that, which basically means that for 1 year, you can launch servers for free, but only of a specific configuration, which is t2.micro. So that's what I'm doing. Right now, when you launch a new server, guys, so basically you have two kind of security mechanisms in place. One is you can either log in through password, which is the default way to do it. With AWS, it gives you a more secure way of logging in, which is using key pair, right? So you'll have to create a new key pair the first time when you're creating a server. So let's call it demo-AWS. Let's download it, and now let's launch the server. Okay, so my server is now getting launched. So it is in the pending state. It takes around a minute to launch a server. Let's name this server as AWS. And now we would want to connect to this server, right? Now, how do you connect to this particular server? What you do is you need softwares like Putty, right? So Putty is a SSH tool which you can use to connect to your server, and you also have a tool like PuttyGen, right? So you can just click on PuttyGen. PuttyGen basically converts your key file into a format which Putty can read, right? So right now it's in the PEM format. We will have to convert it into PPK format. So let's do that. So we'll go into load, we'll go to downloads, and now we'll have to select the PEM file. Now we'll save on the private key. Let's save it on the desktop, and let's name it as demo-AWS, right? So now if I go to my desktop, you can see that I have a PPK which is called demo-AWS, and this has just been converted by the PuttyGen. Now what I'll do is I'll go to Putty, which is basically this particular software, and over here I will have to enter the IP address. So this is the IP address of my server which has now launched. As you can see, public IP. I copy this IP address and I'll paste it in this Putty terminal, right? And now I'll select the PPK file, so which is basically on the desktop, and the name is demo-AWS, right? I'll select it, I'll click on open, and it basically says that this is a new server that you're connecting to. Are you sure you want to connect to it? I'll say yes, and now it'll ask me the login for this server. So I've launched an Ubuntu operating system, so the login for this operating system is Ubuntu. I'll hit enter, and now I am in, right? So as you can see, I am inside the server, and now whatever I want I can do with this server. So there are some commands like I can update the system, which will basically update the operating system, and then I can also launch a website over here, right? So let's say there is a web application software that I can install on it, which is basically Apache 2. So I can say sudo apt-get install Apache 2. So this is a software which basically helps you to host websites. So let me show you a very cool thing. So if we go to the security groups, you can see only port 22 is open as of now, when you use websites or when you want to access websites from a server, what you have to do is you have to open port 80, right? So let's open port 80 over here, which is port HTTP, right? So port 80 will have to open, and who can access port 80? Anywhere, everyone in the world can access it. Let's click on save. And right now I've not installed the software, so basically if I go to the dashboard and try to type in this IP address on the browser, I would not be able to access anything. It'll say it refused to connect, right? But the moment I install the software, you would be able to see that my browser will show you a website, which will basically be the Apache 2 software, right? So let's wait for this software to get installed. And now if I click on refresh, you can see that the Apache 2 Ubuntu default page we are able to see. So now this is a website which has been deployed on this server, and if I want, I can also change this website. I can just go to the folder where all the websites are, and now I can just remove the page which we are seeing on the browser, and I can add a new page, and I can just write a very simple HTML code over here, which will basically show me a sample text which will say welcome to Intellipaat, right? And then I can close the body, I can close the HTML, and now I can just save this file. And if I go here and refresh, you can see I can see this website which is welcome to Intellipaat. So this is how easy it is to host a website with nothing but with AWS platform. If you were to do it by yourself, you would have to buy a computer on which you have a dedicated internet connection. You would have to buy a static IP address. This is a static IP address, right? Which basically means till the time I do not shut the system down, the IP address will remain the same. And everybody in the world, even if you guys go to this IP address right now, you would be able to see this website, right? But that is not the case when you try to host it on from your personal computer, because your personal computer does not have a static IP address. You have to basically buy it from your ISP, right? So this is how you deploy a server on AWS, right? Now what I'm going to show you is, let's see if we can go ahead and deploy a server on Microsoft Azure. So I'll just go here and let me enter the the email address for it. Right, and now let me enter the password. So this is a personal account. So the password would be this, right? So let me just enter the IP address again, the email address again. And now, this is my Azure dashboard, guys. So this is how my Azure dashboard looks like. You can see I have some services running over here. Now what I'll do is I will launch a server just like I launched in AWS. So I'll just go to virtual machines and I will click on add a virtual machine, right? Now it'll take me through the same set of stuff that we went earlier on, with a little modifications, because every cloud provider is different, right? So over here I can choose what is the virtual machine name that I want to give. Let's say we call it Azure Live. Okay, so this is my server name. Where do I want to launch it in? You see in AWS I was in the Mumbai region. Here I can choose which region do I want to launch it in, right? So let's say I want to launch it in South India. Okay, then availability options, I don't want to give any redundancy. What is the operating system that I want to launch? Let's launch an Ubuntu server again, right? So what is the size of the machine that I want to give? So right now the size of the machine is 2 CPU and 8 gig memory. I can change the size, right? So you can choose what size do you need. So let's say we choose this size, 1 vCPU and 512 MB of RAM, right? So let's select this. All right, now what is the authentication type? Do you want to log in through password, or do you want to log in through a public key as we just saw? So let's keep it simple. Let's select password. Let's give the username. We have the option of selecting a username. Let's keep the username as Azure, and let's give the password that I can remember. Okay, it says it's a little small, so I can just give a little longer password which can be accepted by this. Yes, so this is accepted. Now what are the inbound ports that I want to allow? So let's say I want to allow HTTP, and I also want to allow SSH because that is how I'll be logging in, right? So now let's go ahead and click on review plus create. And this is basically what we specified in AWS as well. So it says required information is missing or not valid. Okay, so basics, we did not select the resource group. So what happens in Azure is you can group your resources that you're launching. So let's put in a new group, which is AWS-live, right? Or I can just create here Azure-live. And I can click on OK, right? And now I can click on review plus create, and let's see. Yes, so now it says validation passed, so everything is well. Can you see the pricing over here, guys? It's 50 paisa per hour. This is in INR. It's 50.50 INR per hour. So that's how cheap cloud computing can be in terms of its pricing. Okay, so now let's finally hit create. Right, and now it says your deployment is underway, so it will take some time, but I guess in the next 1.5 minutes you will have your server ready, and I'll show you how you can connect to it. Right, so as you can see, the storage status is accepted, because that basically means that the Azure infrastructure is now deploying the Azure storage. It will then deploy the server, and this would be ready in just a minute. So network configurations are created. If we have a live IP which is created, the compute machine is now getting created, and now a deployment is created. Great. So now I can just go ahead, and what I can do is I can go to resource groups, and this is my resource group Azure-live, and what I have to do is I have to go to virtual machines. Right, and on my virtual machines now I can basically just go ahead and select the IP address. So the IP address is this is the IP address. Let's copy this IP address, and now let's try to connect to it. So I'll go to putty, I'll enter this IP address. So again, the same tool can be used to connect to it. I'll click on open. It says you're connecting to a new server. Is it okay? I'll say yes, it's okay. So what is the login as? The username that I gave was Azure, and the password is Azure @ right, and I'll hit enter. And now if everything goes well, I would be connected to my machine, and I am. Right, so now I'm connected to my machine, and again I can do anything with it. So I can just update this machine again. Right, so this operating system is now getting updated, and once the operating system is updated, I can go ahead and I can install the same software that I actually did earlier, which was Apache 2, and see if I can see a website just like the way we saw on AWS. Okay, so while this is updating, let's just copy this IP address and let me paste it over here. Right, so as you can see right now, it will say refuse to connect. And once I have installed the software here, you would be able to see that the website would be visible on this particular screen. So let's wait for this to complete. It is taking some time. Also guys, because probably the configuration of this server was 512 MB RAM, it could be a reason why this particular process is taking more time, because obviously it is a little more slow than what we had in our earlier machines. So okay, let me try one thing. Okay, so this is done. Let me see if it's updated. Sudo apt-get update, and if it was updated, it should finish pretty fast. It's a little slow because the resources are less. Yes, so it's updated. Now let's install the software. So sudo apt-get install Apache 2, and now it will install the software. A little slow, like I said, because of the resources. So let's give it a little time. It should be ready in the next, let's say, half a minute. All right, I think it's almost over. I think I should have chosen a higher spec for this machine, but never mind. I guess it's almost done, guys. Let's wait for it to complete. Okay, so it's actually complete. So as you can see on this IP address, I have the Apache 2 page now, which basically tells me that Apache 2 installation has been completed. It's still doing some stuff over here, probably because it's a little slow to update me, but yes, the Apache software has been installed. And now if I go ahead and if I change the the website by going into that particular folder, I would be able to have that same effect as I had in AWS. So if I go to this particular folder, I just have to remove this file, and I'll have to create one file which is going to be by the same name, and again an HTML, very simple HTML with an H1 which says welcome to Intellipaat, right? And now you would be able to see the same thing on the browser if I refresh, which says welcome to Intellipaat. Great guys, so now you have an idea of how to launch servers on AWS and Azure. Now guys, we basically are a training company, we as Intellipaat, and we offer training on cloud as well, right? So, and what we intend with our courses is that you get a job in the specific profile that you want to. For example, we give a training on cloud and DevOps, right? So if there is a profile called cloud engineer, so only the knowledge of AWS or Azure would not be enough to become a cloud engineer, right? So that's why we have gone through multiple JDs and we have come up with this curriculum, which basically teaches you not only AWS but Microsoft Azure, DevOps, Python, and Google Cloud. So if you guys are interested, you can actually go ahead and take a look at this course curriculum. Here is the link. You can go to this link and have a look at the course curriculum. And only for people who are there on YouTube with us, you can actually type in the code YouTube30 and you would get an extra 30% discount on whatever price is displayed on the website, right? So if you are interested, you can actually go on these numbers which are mentioned on the screen, or you can also drop a mail to sales@intellipaat.com, and we would be very happy to help you out in all your queries. So with that said, guys, I thank a lot to you guys. Thank you for attending this session. I hope you learned something new today, and we come up with more and more sessions every week. So if you are interested, you can actually subscribe to our channel and hit on that notification icon so that you don't miss out on any updates from us. So with that said, guys, I would like to take a leave from you all. I hope you learned something today. Have a great day ahead, and goodbye.